In the world of ultimate fighting, reputation is a big deal. The Diaz brothers, who hail from Stockton, California, Nick and Nate, have certainly garnered quite the reputation. So has Lafayette, Louisiana's Dustin Poirier, whose shy, calm, and polite demeanor seems to completely disappear when he steps into the octagon. Today, we're looking at how Dustin Poirier and Nate Diaz appear to agree to fight on social media. Here's what you need to know and can expect. You don't want to miss this list. First up, El Diablo calls out the Diamond on social media after Poirier finished Conor the Notorious McGregor by knockout twice in an 8-month timeframe. It became clear to the world that the quiet and reserved Poirier was a force to be reckoned with. Within days of Poirier's second crushing win over McGregor, Nate El Diablo Diaz called out Dustin the Diamond Poirier on social media. While fighters calling out other fighters on social media isn't exactly a new concept, this one was different. El Diablo posted a photo of him and the Diamond from an old UFC press conference that included a message expressing his desire to fight the Diamond in the middleweight division. But here's the kicker: neither El Diablo or the Diamond have ever competed in the middleweight category. Next up, the Diamond responds to El Diablo's challenge. From a weight class and rankings perspective, a Nate Diaz versus Dustin Poirier fight makes about as much sense as the Notorious making a return to the UFC. But from a cash perspective, and let's be honest, cash is Dana White's #1 priority, a Diaz and Poirier fight makes a ton of sense. The fight would surely make White and the UFC millions of dollars. Remember that at the end of the day, with all the glitz, glamour, and fiery rhetoric aside, the UFC is a business just like any other, and what matters to White and his team is the bottom line. The Diamond's response to El Diablo's call-out was swift, and he didn't mince words. Poirier told members of the press, quote, "I've always wanted to whip Nate Diaz's butt. That interests me. Nate Diaz got away and likes to talk a lot of crap online." Poirier's "got away" comment refers to UFC 230 from 2018. At the time, Diaz and Poirier were slated to fight, but the event never came to fruition, and the fight was never rescheduled. The fight was cancelled because Poirier was dealing with a hip injury. Up next, we'll take a look at the humble beginnings of El Diablo. Diaz has been fighting since the tender age of 11. He was raised in a lower middle-class Mexican-American family in the city of Stockton, California, which today has a population of over 300,000 people. As a boy, Diaz started training with his brother, Nick, who today is also a serious professional grade fighter. According to Diaz himself, his hometown of Stockton has played a key part in his success as a fighter. Diaz has said that his hometown taught him one of the most valuable lessons that he could take into his professional fighting career. Diaz says that Stockton taught him to, quote, "always be all the way in when it comes to a fight." Next up, the start of a Cajun storm brewing down south. Dustin the Diamond Poirier was born and raised in the beautiful city of Lafayette, Louisiana. The Acadian city is rich in Cajun and Creole culture and is known for having amazing Cajun-style food, music, and music festivals that are known around the world. As of June 13th, 2021, Lafayette is also home to the #1 ranked lightweight fighter in the world, the Diamond himself, Dustin Poirier. Why do they call him the Diamond? Because he's hard as nails, that's why. Like Diaz, Poirier too comes from humble beginnings. By the time Poirier made it to Lafayette's Northside High School, he was routinely getting into street fights and had developed quite a temper. It's no surprise then that Poirier decided to drop out of high school altogether, and he did so in the 9th grade. His parents were understandably concerned and encouraged Poirier to find an outlet for his teenage anger and frustrations. So, Poirier took their advice and set his sights on mixed martial arts as his potential outlet. As it turns out, Poirier chose wisely. Up next, we'll take a look at El Diablo's career thus far. At the time of this recording, veteran fighter Nate Diaz has had a total of 34 UFC fights. Out of those fights, he was victorious 21 times and has lost 13 times. Before stepping into the UFC's octagon, Diaz fought mostly in the World Extreme Cage Fighting Organization. Back in 2006, during the WEC 24, Diaz fought for the lightweight title, but ended up losing to Hermes Franca via submission. You may recall the popular show, The Ultimate Fighter. During the show's 5th season, Diaz made it to the finals and defeated fighter Manvel Gambaryan by dislocating Gambaryan's right shoulder. As a result, Diaz not only won the match, but won the Ultimate Fighter Championship 5 altogether. Next up, we'll look at the Diamond's career thus far. Back in 2009, Poirier made the decision to do what many mixed martial arts fighters only dream of doing. He turned pro. Like any other industry, when you start off small. Poirier's first pro fights were held across his home state of Louisiana and other southern states. At this level, Poirier fought a total of 7 times and won each time. Like Diaz, Poirier's next logical stop was with the World Extreme Cage Fighting Organization. In August of 2010, Poirier got his first shot against tough opponent Danny Castillo at WEC 50, but unfortunately for Poirier, he lost the fight via unanimous decision. Fast forward to WEC 52, and Poirier was back at it again and eager to redeem himself. In November of 2010, Poirier hopped inside the cage and faced off against Zach Micklewright. This time though, the fight wouldn't end by decision. It ended when Poirier knocked Micklewright out. Up next, El Diablo claws his way up the UFC rankings. Diaz had an impressive debut and climbed up the UFC rankings. Back in 2008, Diaz became vocal about wanting to fight the toughest opponents in the MMA world right after beating Junior Asankao and Alvin Robinson via submission. The UFC agreed to give Diaz what he wanted and lined up a fight with Kurt Pellegrino. Diaz went into the octagon and did what he said he was going to do and beat Pellegrino by triangle choke. A match was then set up between Diaz and Josh Neer, a seasoned UFC fighter. Diaz said he'd beat Neer, and he ultimately did via decision. A year later, Diaz would fight Clay Guida, the then lightweight champion. Guida capitalized on his groundwork and wrestling abilities and was able to outfight Diaz and won by decision. The Guida fight would mark Diaz's first official UFC loss, and it was witnessed by millions of people around the world thanks to pay-per-view. But what does every fighter with the heart of a lion do when they lose? They make a comeback. Next up, the Diamond cuts his way through the UFC rankings. In 2010, the World Extreme Cage Fighting Organization merged with the Ultimate Fighting Championship. 1 year later, the UFC featherweight champ was a man named Jose Aldo. On New Year's Day 2011, Aldo and Poirier stepped into the octagon. When the dust settled, Poirier would be the victor. That same year, in June, at UFC 131, Poirier stepped into the octagon against Jason Young. Poirier dominated the entire fight and won via unanimous decision. Young, who was making his UFC debut, was disappointed by the loss. A few months later, in November of 2011, Poirier stepped into the octagon and beat Pablo Garza with a so-called Darce choke. Garza fans were furious, but Poirier fans went wild and interrupted in cheers and applause. Up next, we'll look at what's next for Nate Diaz. Not only has there been an ongoing war of words for years between El Diablo and the Diamond, but Diaz has also been firing shots in the form of tweets aimed at the Notorious. You may recall that Diaz beat McGregor back in UFC 196. McGregor fans were outraged and the pressure was on for a rematch. Several months later, McGregor fans got their wish when Dana White set up a rematch fight for the fighters at UFC 202. This time though, McGregor would emerge the victor via majority decision. Recently, McGregor's been stirring the pot and taking to social media to call out Diaz and claims that the UFC 202 rematch fight evened the score. Diaz has fired back and more or less laughed off the Notorious's comments. It's also clear that Diaz wouldn't hesitate to fight McGregor anywhere, anytime. El Diablo thinks that he can put the Notorious away for good. One thing is for certain, there are millions of fans who would love to see it happen. Finally, we'll look at what's next for Dustin Poirier, and as a bonus, a Poirier versus Diaz fight prediction. Rumors are going wild with the possibility of a Poirier and Diaz matchup. It's probably because stylistically both fighters are similar and both are tough as hell. Both fighters have said that if a fight does happen, it'll be a good one. But right now, Poirier has said that he's more focused and interested in fighting Charles Oliveira than Diaz. But at the same time, Poirier insists that he'd welcome a match with Diaz and is confident that he can defeat him. Also, MMAOracle.com predicts that victory in a Poirier versus Diaz matchup would go to Poirier. So, sorry Diaz fans, but if Poirier and Diaz stepped into the Aragon, the Diamond will likely exorcise El Diablo. Thanks for listening and watching. More exciting and informative videos are on the way.